Marielle stood by the living room window, anxiously reflecting on the changes that had recently shaken her family. Merely thinking about Severin, the man with whom she had once shared all her hopes and dreams, brought a rush of both tenderness and the sting of betrayal. They had been together for 20 years, raising their daughter Aveline, and until recently, Marielle believed their life was more or less harmonious, if not perfect. Everything faltered when Aveline grew passionate about theatre and joined a new drama club at school, where she met its leader, whom everyone simply called the director. On official school documents, the director appeared under a woman's name, but it soon emerged that this individual was actually a transgender man named Alistair, and it was Alistair with whom Severin, Marielle's husband, had fallen in love. Yet before delving into the emotional turmoil, Marielle found her thoughts drifting back to where it all began, recollections of the wonderful moments she had shared with Severin. Their wedding, Aveline's birth, buying a house together, and going on family vacations. These memories stood out all the more vividly now that current events had cast them in sharper relief. Marielle and Severin attended the same university, albeit on different faculties. She studied design while he pursued engineering. They first met through mutual friends in a student cafe. Marielle still recalls how Severin moved a chair for her that evening, listened intently to everything she said, and showed genuine interest in her dreams of working in interior design and floral arrangement. At a nearby table, a rowdy group was discussing movies and sports, but Marielle and Severin were lost in their own conversation. Severin had soft eyes and a gentle shyness that captivated Marielle far more than any flashy boasts. Even then, she sensed that he was someone who truly listened rather than just waited to speak. Marielle's friend half-jokingly remarked that a new couple might be forming right before our eyes, but Marielle merely blushed and waved the idea off. Even so, her heart was already beating faster than normal. Many years later, now standing by the window of their family home, Marielle struggled to pinpoint exactly when their life together began to crack. Aveline, their teenage daughter, had stormed off to her room, slamming the door. Severin seemed paralyzed by guilt, unable to talk about what had happened. All of it stemmed from the fact that he had confessed to Marielle he had fallen in love with Alistair, a person who appeared to be a woman but was actually a man. It all started as a seemingly ordinary event. Aveline joined a drama club. She came home, glowing with excitement. "Mom, we have a new leader. Everyone calls them the director. He's so unbelievably talented." Marielle merely smiled, glad that her daughter had found a serious artistic pursuit. She never imagined that this man, Alistair, would become the source of such anguish in their home. Back in the present, Marielle's suspicions arose when Severin started disappearing on Saturdays or returning home late from work with vague excuses like, "I need to run to the office," or "the car needs urgent repair." Always a meticulous man, he now displayed clear nervousness. Before long, Aveline confided in her mother that something peculiar was going on. Dad sometimes shows up early to rehearsal, then he and Alistair locked themselves in the prop room to talk for a while. The teenager couldn't fully articulate what she sensed, only implying that something about her father's closeness to the director felt odd. Marielle, who tended to be level-headed, tried to reassure herself. "He's probably just helping with sets," she said. But a nagging feeling inside told her otherwise. A day came when Marielle saw, with her own eyes, the moment that shattered her final doubts. She arrived early at the school to pick up Aveline and spotted Severin with Alistair in the auditorium, talking in hushed voices while standing very close. At one point, she clearly witnessed their hands gently touching, a gesture that spoke volumes. That night, She confronted Severin. "I saw it all. Please, tell me I misunderstood. Tell me I got it wrong." Severin lowered his gaze, looking utterly exhausted. "No, you understood correctly. Marielle, I'm in love with Alistair." Those words felt like they ripped something out of her soul, but Severin went further, admitting that Alistair was, in truth, a transgender man, and that Severin had always felt drawn to feminine-looking men, though he had never been able to accept it. He had married Marielle, hoping to be normal, but after meeting Alistair, he realized that he could no longer live in denial. Perhaps the hardest part was Aveline's reaction. Hearing her father admit his feelings for Alistair, she refused to accept that it was real. "Dad, so you've been lying to us all this time? You're married to Mum, but you say you love a man?" She stared at him as if he'd committed a crime. Severin couldn't find the words to make her understand that he hadn't really lied so much as suppressed who he was. Aveline began to cry, then bolted to her room, slamming the door. Marielle, desperate to console her daughter, felt herself on the verge of collapsing emotionally. But she tried to keep it together, realizing that Aveline, caught between her idealized view of her father and this sudden twist, was suffering most of all. Before long, Marielle decided she had to talk to Alistair personally to understand who this man was, the one for whose sake her husband had torn apart their family life. She went to the school and waited until most teachers left, then found Alistair alone in the rehearsal room. He looked tense. Clearly, he anticipated a difficult conversation. When Marielle said she needed the truth, he didn't evade. "I know how this must look," he said softly, "but real feelings developed between Severin and me. I'm a transgender man, but many still see me as a woman. Inside, though, I feel like a man. And apparently, Severin has always been drawn to someone with that duality. It just turned out that we understood each other." Marielle's hands trembled. Part of her wanted to scream at Alistair, "Why did you break up my family?" Yet she also sensed genuine pain in his voice. He, too, had spent years struggling to reconcile his identity with society's expectations. Still, the knowledge that her marriage was unraveling because of this only increased her distress. After Marielle's conversation with Alistair, things only got worse. Aveline quit the drama club, saying she couldn't bear to see the director who had stolen her dad. Severin was tormented by the pull between his new love and his family, which he didn't want to abandon. Meanwhile, Marielle felt ambivalent. She couldn't remain with a man who loved someone else so fervently, yet she wasn't ready to throw him out. He was still Aveline's father, and her own feelings for him had not vanished overnight. Evenings found them retreating to separate corners of the house. Aveline cried behind her closed bedroom door, often blasting loud music. Marielle sank into the living room couch, the TV murmuring meaninglessly in the background. Severin locked himself in the master bedroom, occasionally attempting to speak to his wife, although she wasn't yet open to conversation. Marielle recalled how, about 6 or 7 years before, the three of them had gone to a seaside resort town. They rented a basic guest house by the shore, full of sunshine and laughter. Typically reserved, Severin became surprisingly outgoing there, teaching Aveline how to dive underwater, buying her a swan-shaped inflatable, and dashing around joyfully along the beach. One evening, the family stayed on the shore to watch the sunset. Marielle watched her husband and daughter happily mold sandcastles. The sky was aglow in oranges and pinks. She felt certain that this was a real family, one so strong that nothing could shake it. She had no inkling of the silent conflict within Severin that would eventually surface. Desperate to find some clarity, Marielle insisted on a full family sit-down in the living room. They sat awkwardly, spaced apart. Aveline crossed her arms, her eyes brimming with defiance. Carefully, Severin began to speak about not wanting to lose contact with his daughter. Suddenly, Aveline blurted, "Dad, you told Mom you're in love with Alistair. Does this mean you were different all along? Or is it just something new? How can you claim you're not leaving us while saying you love him?" Severin tried to explain. "Maybe I did know, deep down, that I'm attracted to men, especially someone like Alistair, who possesses both feminine and masculine traits. But I tried living by conventional norms. I fell in love with your mum, and I hope to be normal. I truly love you both, just differently. Alistair awakened in me something I'd been suppressing, and I don't want to lie anymore." Aveline didn't let him finish. She shouted, "All you care about is him," and stormed out. Marielle saw the torment on Severin's face. She knew he was hurting, but no words could soothe the sense of betrayal his daughter felt. Eventually, Marielle and Severin recognized that living under one roof in a state of constant tension was unbearable. One evening, after Aveline left to visit a friend, they sat together in the kitchen. Marielle tentatively said, "Maybe you should stay with your parents for a while. Give Aveline and me some time to process all this, and maybe you could figure things out as well." Severin paled, but realized she was right. Yes, maybe that would be best. "I don't want to drive you both into breakdowns. I'll talk to my parents. This doesn't mean I'm abandoning you. I'll still be here for you and Aveline. But maybe this is the right step for now." Marielle nodded in silence. Deep down, it felt like a bitter acceptance that their marriage couldn't be saved. Severin's other love was too strong. She remembered how she used to love quiet evenings with Severin, cooking simple meals, listening to Aveline chatter about her day, or sitting down to watch a movie together. Severin always helped with the cleaning and shopping, and Aveline would sometimes put on mini shows in the living room, dancing around in a child's costume. Back then, Marielle believed that this was the essence of a happy family. No major drama, just the daily warmth of shared routines. She could never have imagined that decades later, her husband would admit to harboring an attraction he could no longer deny. On the day Severin packed his things to stay at his parents' house, he stepped into Aveline's room. Marielle stood in the hallway and caught snippets of their exchange. Severin spoke gently. "Aveline, you'll always be my daughter. I know it's hard for you to grasp why I'm doing this, but please understand that I'm not just walking away from you. I just need time and space, and I think you and your mum need it too." Aveline sat on her bed, staring at her phone. In a quiet voice, she asked, "Do you truly love him? With all your heart?" Severin nodded, though she might not have seen. "Yes, Aveline, I know I've hurt you and your mum, but I can't pretend anymore." She said nothing, gripping her phone more tightly. Eventually, she murmured, "Just go." As he left her room, Severin walked past Marielle. Their eyes met, and his pleaded for forgiveness. She remained silent and turned away. The first few weeks after Severin's departure were especially bleak. Marielle kept herself busy with design work, taking on additional projects so she wouldn't have to think about what had happened. Aveline seemed withdrawn, shutting herself away with music and texting her friends for hours. There was a sense that the house was hollow, deserted. True, the frequent conflicts had subsided, but so had any lingering sense of a shared life. Now, Marielle and Aveline lived together, carefully avoiding any mention of Severin. He, however, kept calling to check on them, sometimes offering money to help pay bills or do chores. During these phone calls, Marielle kept her tone civil, yet cold, realizing she no longer viewed Severin as her spouse. Meanwhile, Aveline would sometimes grab the phone, and shout, "Why do you even call? We can handle things ourselves," only to break down crying afterward. Marielle remembered a happier moment. When Aveline turned 10, she and Severine decided to fulfill her long-held dream by buying a piano, an older instrument, but still in good condition. The three of them went to a music shop. Aveline flitted excitedly among keyboards, guitars, and other instruments. When the piano was finally delivered and placed in the living room, their daughter squealed with delight and immediately started pressing the keys. The sounds were disorganized, but Severine simply laughed and said, "This is the most wonderful music I've ever heard." Marielle felt their bond as a family as strongly as ever. Sensing that she and her daughter were mired in an emotional dead end, Marielle decided to see a therapist. After a few sessions and plenty of persuasion, Aveline agreed to attend as well. Marielle spoke of her sense of betrayal. Severin had been a caring husband and father, yet now he claimed he had always been drawn to people like Alistair. She didn't know how to reconcile that cherished past with his current revelations. Aveline described her heartbreak. "My dad isn't who I thought. I feel embarrassed around my classmates because rumors are spreading that our director is actually a man, and my dad's involved with him." Over time, therapy allowed them to discuss the situation more calmly. Their therapist pointed out that neither Severin nor Alistair acted out of spite, but rather in pursuit of personal truth. Though this truth was painful for Marielle, Aveline, and Severin himself. Marielle also recalled their porcelain anniversary. 20 years of marriage, more or less. That evening, Aveline baked a cake with the words, "Best parents ever." Severin gave Marielle a bouquet of lilies, and she cheerfully cooked a celebratory meal. Later, the three of them sat around playing board games and laughing. Severin expressed heartfelt gratitude. "Thank you for being with me all these years, Marielle. Thank you for our wonderful daughter." She embraced him while Aveline danced around them, hugging each parent in turn, and a gentle joy filled the air. A few months after Severin left, they agreed to meet at a neutral location, a small cafe in town. Marielle arrived with Aveline. Severine came alone. Alistair was deliberately not invited to avoid upsetting the girl. They sat in tense silence at first, each staring down at the table. Eventually, Severin softly asked, "How are you?" Aveline rolled her eyes, but said nothing. At last, Marielle replied, "We're managing. But Aveline is still struggling, and so am I." Aveline put her phone aside and asked quietly, "Dad, do you really intend to spend your life with Alistair? You've ruined everything." Severin, apparently braced for the question, answered, "I don't want to lose you, Aveline, but I can't deny who I am anymore. I'm not asking you or your mum to approve, but I can't pretend that I'm only attracted to women." Aveline scowled, replying in a subdued voice, "It's just hard to handle. But if you're not going to abandon me, and if you'll keep being my dad, maybe I can learn to live with this eventually." Marielle felt a faint glimmer of relief. It was progress, albeit tinged with sorrow. Marielle remembered a moment before Aveline's birth, when she and Severine went to a chapel to light candles for their marriage. She was 7 months pregnant, and he suggested they pray for a safe delivery, saying, "I'll always be by your side." She believed him with all her heart back then. Now those words had a bittersweet echo, yet she recognized that in some ways Severin still stood with her and Aveline, not as a husband, but as someone who cared for them, even while choosing an alternate path. Time passed, and Marielle found that the ache in her heart grew somewhat less acute. Though she still felt pangs at the idea of Severin being with Alistair, she understood he had found someone who completed him in a way she never could. Aveline continued to avoid her old drama club, having moved to a new youth theatre at the local cultural centre so she wouldn't have to see Alistair. She remained upset, but the intensity of her anger ebbed. Severin settled into a new pattern of life, staying at his parents' home and seeing Alistair openly. He wasn't hiding his feelings anymore. Meanwhile, he and Marielle technically remained married on paper, but it was clear that emotionally their marriage was over. She realized there was no point in clinging to a legal bond that no longer reflected reality. Eventually, Marielle told Severin she had filed for divorce. It was not to punish him, but to formalize the shift in their lives. Severin agreed, though he sounded sorrowful. "I understand. I can't ask you to stay married to me after all this, but please know I want to remain in your and Aveline's life if I can." Marielle replied, "I appreciate that. I hope we can remain on good terms for Aveline's sake. But as husband and wife, we're done." Aveline reacted with initial pain, then a quiet sadness. "So, I guess I don't have an official family anymore." Marielle placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder, saying, "We are still your family, just in a different form." After that, several more months passed. Aveline settled into her new theatre group, gradually letting go of the painful memories of Alistair's drama club. Marielle threw herself into design projects, feeling both the sting of betrayal and a sense of liberation. Severin visited from time to time, bringing gifts or funds for Aveline's education. Their relationships remained complicated, yet there was a cautious new openness devoid of complete deception. One evening, while leafing through an old photo album, Marielle came across pictures of their wedding, Aveline's birth, the day they bought their house, and their seaside trip. Severin appeared in nearly every shot, both of them smiling, happiness radiating from their faces. Tears slipped down Marielle's cheeks, but she realized they weren't purely tears of sorrow. They also carried a warmth that came from remembering genuine joy. She saw that nothing could erase the good things that once existed. Severin's choice to pursue true self-discovery did not negate the fact that, for many years, the two of them had loved each other and built a life together. Now, he had finally found someone in Alistair, someone who awakened a deeper part of his identity. And Marielle felt a strange sense of calm. At least the illusions had fallen away, replaced by honesty. Gently closing the album, she gazed over at Aveline in the adjacent room, working on homework. "We're alive, we're together, and we still have a future," Marielle thought. Indeed, their family might look different now, but no one could take from them the years of genuine joy they'd once shared, nor prevent them from forging a new path ahead. Thus, the story ends, where love, pain, loyalty, anger, regret, sorrow, and disappointment intersect. Severin, long hesitant to acknowledge his inner self, found in Alistair a kindred spirit. Marielle, feeling the wound of his betrayal, still strives to preserve her own integrity and her bond with their daughter. Aveline tries to accept a father who has changed in ways she never anticipated. Yet life moves forward, even when old notions of family collapse. In the end, it may be that painful honesty sets the stage for genuine healing rather than total destruction. And each person has the chance to find their own true place under the sun, no matter how formidable the trials along the way may be.